Hi, my name's Phil. I'm the host and creator of the Taming Hindrances podcast, where I delve into self-awareness and mental health. You can find the podcast over at taminghindrances.com, link in the description below. One of the things I go over quite often in the podcast, but also just have gotten into in the last few years of my life, is supplementation and how supplementation can give us a better control over our health aspects, specifically the physical form that I talk about on the podcast. The differentiation being we have the physical body, the mental body, and the other, or the spiritual body. So as far as supplementation goes, I like to do deep dives on either products I really like or just interesting topics. And today is all about Chaga Mushroom and should you be taking it? Now, full disclosure up front, I'm an affiliate with purebulk.com. I recommend all of their products, but I do specifically really like their Chaga product, and I'll get into that at the end. What I like to do up front with my deep dives is just kind of give you the basic upfront and help you make some decisions. If you want to stick around for the full deep dive, I get deeper into what Chaga is all about. But Chaga mushroom, also known as Anonos obliquus, is it's a fungus, and it typically grows on birch trees in northern hemispheres, Siberia, Alaska, Canada. And reasons you might take it are Chaga has a vast array of nutrients. It also has a long medical history or medicinal history in ancient medicines and specifically in cultural import. Some of the possible health benefits of Chaga include everything from immune system support to anti-inflammatory, cancer, oxidant, viral, antimicrobial. It can help regulate blood sugar, lower cholesterol, their skin health, weight loss, all sorts of different things it may help with. So I think it's something interesting as far as the breadth of health benefits it can have. Getting into a little bit of the medicinal history here, there's notations in everywhere from Russia, Norway, China, Korea, even Native American in the Americas. There's some history there with populations that were around birch forests. Specifically with Chaga, it's noted that it's typically found on birch trees, but that's not the only tree it's found on, and we can get into that a little bit later. But of note in medicinal history is Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, Cancer Ward. And I think more inclusively, though, along that same time period is Dr. Sergei Maslenikov, who noted treating cancers specifically with just Chaga supplementation, and that was back in the early 1900s. Now, more modern research, you can go to PubMed, scholar.google.com, the NLM, which is the National Library of Medicine, and also one that I really like for mushroom references is mushroomreferences.com. But each of those I like to use for, different aspects of, what's really going on in modern medicine. And there are quite a few results across that entire group of locations you can go check out. And moving into more of the should you take it side of things, that, full disclaimer, not a doctor, medical professional, please do your own research. I have to say that, and consult with your trusted advisors. But there's a lot of research, publication, and anecdotal evidence to say that there are multiple things Chaga can help with as far as our range of health, either issues or just support that we might, want to take it for. Personally, I've been taking Chaga for over 2 years, and more recently, in about the last year and a half, it's an anchor in my daily supplementation. I use it as an immune support. I'll up my doses if I'm feeling, run down or other things like that. I do find that it gives me a little bit more boost in energy, but specifically on the immune boosting side is where I really like to use it. And I'll get into some of those reasons as we get into the deep dive here. So the upfront stuff, as I like to, keep it short in the beginning. Does Chaga have medicinal benefits? Absolutely. I don't think that's arguable. There's plenty of research out there, and there's a vast array of reasons one might want to take Chaga. I personally have taken it, and I have definitely found that it's an anchor in my supplement regimen, and it definitely has helped me with quite a few things. One specific thing for myself is it really helped me get my gut biome back together. It really helped me put together a more healthy gut biome, to specifically a microbiome in all inclusiveness that just gives me a better base to use other supplementation from. So I think it's really important to note that in my own personal use. But let's get into deep dive here. So the deep dive for chaga is, let's talk about some upfront 30,000 foot view here. It's super nutrient dense. It's got all sorts of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and glyconutrients in it. But important to note is source and purity. You might note up in the right-hand corner there, purebulk.com sells chaga mushroom extract in a 4-to-1, but it's Siberian sourced. And there's some importance behind that because the growing conditions and the source of where the chaga grows makes up different chemical compositions. We'll get into one known as Butylenic acid, which specifically comes from chaga grown on birch trees, and Siberian sourced chaga is sourced from birch trees. There's also multiple consumption methods, so I like it as a supplementation in that sense, and I think it's to note that there's just different ways you can take it, so it makes it a little bit more accessible to a lot of different people. What nutrients are in it? There's vitamin B1, B2, B3, and there's also D2, which is ergosterol, which is it's the non-plant-based version of vitamin D. There's quite a bit of vitamin D in chaga, actually. That's, in my personal opinion, what gives it its typical black coloring. Chaga is also known as the clinker polypore. Clinkers are slag metal darkened, after, doing welding or certain production of metal compounds. So it has this like dark kind of burnt look to it. But other minerals in it are calcium, copper, chloride, iron, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, sodium, zinc. There's all sorts of stuff in this. It's super nutrient dense, which makes it bioavailable for doing all sorts of different health processes in the body. But one of the big ones in this, again, is how much vitamin D is actually in this. So much so that the chaga mushroom itself produces melanin. That's what gives us its dark exterior coloring. Now, there's also phyto and glyconutrients in it. To note is Butylenic acid, which we're going to get into, beta-glucans. We'll get into one of the polysaccharides, but there's also other tripeptides, triterpenes, saponins, and sterols. These are all naturally occurring steroids or different other, nutrients that the body will use to create all sorts of different amino acid chains. It gets very, very in depth, but I try to keep these a little bit shorter than I would like to, because there's just a lot to talk about here. But let's get into some of the more important factors as far as the research that's been done, or what the most notable nutrients are. One of those is Butylenic acid, which is a triterpenoid. It's the bioavailable version of butylene. And it's anti-inflammatory, antiviral, anti-cancer, antimicrobial. It's an antioxidant. And it may help with cholesterol and improve cardiovascular health. That's via anti-atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of the arteries. And that's been studied and shown. So that's an important one there. It also may increase insulin sensitivity, thus helping control blood sugar. There's been some studies as far as, what will this help someone with diabetes? And it does show that there is some insulin sensitivity increase there. Going back to the anti-everything up there, the anti-inflammatory properties of Butylenic acid are pretty effective, but really to note here is the anti-cancer. And this is where, when we look at, any historical record or any show of chaga being used to treat cancer as a supplementation form, this is really what we're looking at. And this is why the source is important, because chaga only gets Butylenic acid. It will only contain Butylenic acid from being sourced from birch trees, because birch trees produce butylene in their bark. It's actually what gives them their bark that white coloring. So only chaga sourced from birch trees will have this Butylenic acid in it. Moving on, we have beta-glucans, which are one of the polysaccharides that are included in chaga mushroom. And beta-glucans are soluble fiber. So, it's a fiber source, but it may help with the following, and it may help with a bunch of things. One is regulating digestion. This is the one I think most helps me because I've had some digestion issues in the past. I was one of those individuals who got put on high levels of opioids because I had broken my femur, and that just messed my stomach up really bad. So it took me a really long time to get a better gut biome back together. And chaga is one of the things I think helped the most with this in the last few years. It also may help control blood sugar levels, lower cholesterol. It supports a healthy microbiome. Fiber in general does that, but beta-glucans are really important for that. There's multiple different beta-glucans out there, specifically in the fungus world. So, other mushrooms like reishi and turkey tail, cordyceps, they all typically include a beta-glucan. One of those is beta-glucan D, or beta-D-glucan. And that's the one that supports both a passive and adaptive immune functions. And this is where I think chaga has its most effect in the immune side of things when it comes to beta-glucans, because it helps pattern recognition receptors, which are PRRs, by providing them pathogen-associated molecular patterns, PAMPs. What that essentially means is they give the blueprint to the pattern recognition receptors for pathogens. They say, hey, I know this to be a pathogen that may cause harm. Keep an eye out for it. And it just gives that pattern over to the pattern recognition receptors. So it allows for a more ready passive immune function. If your PRRs have that blueprint, they can go, hey, you're not supposed to be here, and they can pick it up quicker instead of having to go through the whole creation of, what that might look like. It also enhances the natural killer cells, and it helps with white blood cell, macrophage, granulocyte, monocyte activation via the dectin-1 receptor that's been shown, which is an interesting function. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but it does help all of those active immune system functions to, do their job better by giving them the information they need. And it also regulates cytokine regulation. Cytokines are what our body produces to fight off viral infections and some fungal infections. And, in recent history, we've talked about cytokine storms in, medical research as far as virals and stuff like that. But it helps regulate that, because if you overproduce cytokines, you can do damage to yourself. So it's helpful to have that regulation. And then it also has antigen presenting cell stimulation. Antigens are what our body uses to figure out, like, oh, how do I get rid of this viral thing that's trying to replicate? I create these antigens, and then the antigens attach and destroy the virus's packets. So it helps stimulate that function to say, like, hey, you need to, produce these, get ready, got to go kill some stuff. So there's quite a bit that beta-glucans do to help us with passively and adaptively in the immune functions. Chaga mushroom also includes superoxide dismutase, which is an enzyme found in all living cells. All living cells have this because it specifically helps scavenge superoxide radicals, which is a negative O2. It does that by breaking that negative O2 down into both oxygen and hydrogen peroxide. And then your body can better kind of figure out what to do with that instead of just having this crazy superoxide running around as a free radical doing all sorts of damage. For those of you who may not know, reason antioxidants are so important is because we have this thing known as oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is what happens when we have too much oxygen in the body, because oxygen does damage. Yes, we need oxygen to live, but oxygen does damage. And it's also, oxygen is typically a byproduct of a lot of the chemical functions of the body. So it's not good to just have it lying around. In fact, oxidative stress can cause inflammation, and inflammation is, in my personal opinion, kind of the precursor to about, I would say, 80 to 90% of all chronic diseases, specifically anything dealing with autoimmune and those types of diseases. So having this extra superoxide dismutase helps us scavenge all those free radicals and get rid of them. Every cell in the body has it, living cell. So it's something that's already there. This just kind of helps bolster that. It's specifically important for skin health. It helps skin health as far as the repair function, makes your skin look, nicer. It's part of superoxide dismutase is typically added to, a lot of skincare products, but it also might help with osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, a lot of other colitis, which is inflammation of the colon. It has some function against pneumonia and other issues. So there's just a lot going on there. Now, again, I didn't want to make this too long. Those are the three big ones, but there is a lot going on with Chaga Mushroom, and there's quite a few reasons you might want to take it. Again, not a doctor, can't diagnose or prescribe, consult with your medical professionals. But my final thoughts, it's been well documented and researched as far as going back to what we consider quote unquote ancient medicines or traditional medicines. It's definitely been used there. As far as the Dr. Meliskanov, his research came about from watching the populace back in the early 1900s, that they were starting to write in the early 1900s, late 1800s. They were starting to write about how populations were increasing the cancer numbers. So across the board in the medical, field, doctors were writing about the populations having higher levels of cancer back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And Dr. Meliskanov, he looked at the area in which he was living or practicing and noticed that it was lower in the rural, suburban Russian areas. And one of the things he noted was individuals were going out and they were, harvesting chaga mushroom, and then they would make a tea out of it. It was kind of like the lay person's or the poor person's tea. If you couldn't afford to go get real tea, not quote unquote real tea, but you couldn't go afford to buy, prepared teas, you'd go out and you'd, hack some chaga mushroom off a birch tree and you make a tea out of it. It's actually pretty delicious. I've had it. It's very earthy flavored. So that was kind of, a start that he figured that out. And then he started to treat individuals with high levels of supplementation of just chaga. And he notes in his research papers, but specifically in his journals, that it helped treat that. So there is a large documentation. That's just one of many, many cultures have used it to make teas. Even some poultices to, add to cuts and scrapes and abrasions, or, things like poison ivy or poison sumac and those types of things to make a poultice and rub it on there because it has all these anti-everything, functions. So that's kind of where I started a lot of my research with it. And it just grows into, again, you can go to PubMed, you can go to scholar.google.com. There's all sorts of research going on about chaga mushrooms and its benefits. So to add to that, there's many different nutrients with multiple different health benefits in it. It's full of all sorts of stuff, vitamin Bs, vitamin D. The vitamin D content is crazy. There's a lot of vitamin D in chaga, and vitamin D it's a prohormone. In case you didn't know, it's not just a vitamin, it's a prohormone, and it regulates like 3,000 different processes in the body. I did a deep dive on vitamins. If you want to go check that out on the channel, gets into all that, but it's also easy to incorporate into supplement stacks. There's tons of different ways to take this. I like adding it to my coffee. I've also added it to different teas. I've made tea out of it. I know people who have added it to their shakes. Just, adds kind of an earthy flavor. It's not too mushroomy if you're not a fan of mushroom flavor. And I don't know many people who have ever suffered from stomach issues taking chaga. It's pretty well tolerated. I've also sprinkled it on the meals. I know some other people that do that. And the capsules make that easy. So if you don't feel like buying the powder and measuring it out, or if you don't want to buy chunks and make tea out of it, Pure Bulk has capsules now, and that just makes it easy to, it's pre-measured, and the capsules are really easy just to pull apart. So you just pull apart, there you go. You can add it to your coffee. Every once in a while, I'll just take two or three capsules and open them on top of my coffee, mix it in, gives it a nice earthy flavor. So that's really what I have for you. I didn't want to make this one too long. Products are available in the description below. Again, I'm affiliate with purebulk.com. There's a 10% discount code there. And important to note is Pure Bulk does source theirs from Siberia, and it's a 4-to-1 fruiting body extract, and it's good. I like it. I have it all right here with me. You know, I used to just do the powder, but recently they sent me the capsules to try them out, and again, super helpful. They are in, I'll give you the dosing here. There's 120 in a bottle, and it's a 500 milligrams of the fruiting body, and it breaks that down into, there's 210 milligrams of polysaccharides and 120 of the beta glucans. So right there, you know, the big things I was talking about, they listed out. Another thing about purebulk.com is you can get a COA. If you want to know where it was sourced, what the lab, you know, results were for it. They're really upfront about everything. They're an amazing company. I'm happy to be affiliated with them. I don't affiliate myself with many companies, but I've used Pure Bulk for a while. So again, description has the link, 10% off code. And yeah, if you're interested in Chaga, head over to Pure Bulk. They have some more information for you. And that's all I got for you. Happy supplementation.